According to the most recent census, about 58% of units in the district are occupied by renters as opposed to owners, and about half of those units are covered under rent control. That's about 80,000 units. Rent control is the most widely used affordable housing program in DC and was created to increase the amount of low and moderately priced housing for affordable housing needs. With the current legislation set to expire in 2020, tenants and tenant advocates are demanding that City Council not only extend its policy, but also expand it and make it more inclusive for all.
My name is Victoria Gonsalves. I'm a tenant organizer at the Latino Economic Development Center. Rent control in DC ensures that there's a limit on how much the rent can increase every year. And there's a lot of people being displaced out of this city right now. It's becoming a lot more expensive to live in. So rent control is really a key measure that is preventing displacement in the city. But it's also really broken, and there are a lot of loopholes in the law that landlords use to get really big rent increases.
Victoria and LEDC are part of a larger coalition of advocacy groups who are working to change the rent control laws. On November 6, the groups held an open house event to help tenants who are being taken advantage of write testimonies to share at a hearing with DC Council next week. One group present at the open house was the DC Tenants' Rights Center, and Lee Higgins, an attorney, represented them.
We are a private law firm that only represents tenants who live in the district. We are a part of the coalition and support their platform, and I'm really excited to see this great coalition of all different types of advocates coming together on this issue of rent control.
So the Reclaim Rent Control campaign wants to expand rent control to more buildings.
Currently, units built after 1985 are ineligible for rent control.
We want to close these loopholes.
One of these loopholes is the hardship exemption. If a landlord makes less than 12% returns, they are entitled to increase rent.
Like 12% profit is ridiculously high, and it's ridiculous that they're entitled to make such a high profit, but people aren't entitled to have housing. So we want to make sure that rent control remains a really strong force in the city against displacement, because the city is going to keep growing, and Black and brown residents are going to keep being pushed out.
Displacement is a big issue in the district. 1 in 5 residents are spending more than half their income on rent.
I think the biggest reason rent control is important is that it provides a measure of stability and predictability about what your future rent is going to look like. And so that stability affects communities, it affects neighborhoods, it affects kids in school.
This city is going to continue to grow, and the city is actively doing things to make sure that the city continues to grow, but who is that growing for, and what are we doing to make sure that people who live here, people who have lived here for generations, can still afford to live here?
The first hearing on rent control takes place next week, and the Reclaim Rent Control movement hopes DC Council will listen to their demands.